Fall camp is here, and from an outsider's perspective, I know everybody listening to this podcast is, probably members of the general's quarters and all that, but we've talked about competition at left guard and secondary and all that all summer long. Brent, what's probably the biggest thing that people are paying attention to from an outsider's perspective, maybe from a national scale, with Tennessee beginning fall camp today?
No, it's all about Nico, and can he do it? Can he be the guy? Is the hype real from a national? From a national storyline, that's what everybody's asking about this team. I think they know about the defensive line. I think there'll be some people who get into what is it, Rob? Into the baseball stats, or I forget how you say it. But when you get into
inside baseball,
I mean, there'll be some people asking questions about the secondary, but if you're talking about national people who are doing, a couple graphs on every team in the SEC, what to look for in fall camp, there's one name, and it doesn't even have to have his last name. It's Nico. That's what everybody's asking about right now.
Or if somebody's coming in to write a feature, flying from out of town and paying for a hotel room for a couple of nights, they're not coming to write about left guard. I mean, they're coming to write about the number one prospect in the country, 2 years ago.
Yeah. Is Mel Allen showing up for this?
Hey, I love the baseball bunch, man. I love Mel Allen, but I really love the baseball bunch. It was awesome.
It was.
I go back to something Hubbard said a couple weeks ago about, maybe the biggest question, at least offensively, is, of course, left guard. Who's going to be the starter at left guard? But the question really should be about the tight end position because it's brand new. You've got veterans that have played at left guard, and you've got some options that are experienced there, but you really don't at the tight end position. You feel good about the playmaking ability of wide receiver. You feel good about Nico. Of course, everything you guys said, we'll have to see if he can, be the guy, but you feel good about that option. You like Dylan Sampson, and, there's some question marks about the running backs behind him, but really the tight end position, Rob, is brand new, and that's such a vital, important piece. It felt like Miles Kitzman gave the staff a lot to feel good about in the spring, and then a healthy Ethan Davis along with transfer Holden Stays. That's going to be a massive storyline in fall camp, at least from the insiders, here on the GQ.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. I mean, and I think you make a good point about left guard. We've talked about it, but I mean, whoever ends up as the starter, there's going to be somebody that's played some football for you. Whether it's Jackson Lampley or Carrick, or you've got some veterans there. But yeah, you see, it is kind of fascinating at tight end, with Stace, and everybody thinks Ethan Davis is a phenomenal looking prospect, but he's yet to, he's got to go do it. I mean, he played wide receiver pretty much in high school, injured last year. So, and that's a position. I mean, I don't know how many words Hubbard's written about it, but I mean, how important is that position in this offense? I mean, it may not, put up sexy stats, but I mean, that's a big deal, in terms of what they want to do. So yeah, that's it's hard to overstate how important that tight end, and you got to hit on your transfers, and early returns are very positive, but that's a huge factor in fall camp.
Brent, how will Tennessee manage guys like Cooper Mays, guys like Dylan Sampson, guys like Brew McCoy over the course of the next month?
Well, I mean, they're going to have a fight with Keenan Peely and Brew McCoy.
Yeah, Keenan Peely's a good one.
On getting them to slow down. AP, you and I have had enough conversations with Keenan Peely. The mentality he has, part of the culture that he's a part of, and they just don't believe in an off day, and it's like, buddy, you've played a gazillion snaps in your last 7 years or 8 years of college football, whatever it is now. You're needed on Saturday. Like, there's no point in you getting yourself beat up in fall camp in any way, shape, or form. So they'll probably have to take his helmet some days and just hide it to where he doesn't practice. I think you're going to fight that a little bit with Brew McCoy as well. But, yeah, you got to be smart. I mean, Cooper Mays, I joke about the bubble wrap, but, man, you just don't want anybody rolling up on him, in a pile. I mean, I'm not saying that he doesn't need some contact, because that's a given. That position has to have some contact. But you got to find a backup center anyway. So how much better is Cooper Mays going to get as a football player in 20 days of practice in August before they play the first game? Now, there's a difference in getting in shape and getting some contact work to get in physical shape to play versus really improving at that position. With all the snaps he's played, how much better of a football player for this team this fall is he going to be by going and scrimmaging 70 snaps on a Tuesday in August? My answer to that would be very little. Whereas you need to find you need
Zero.
to find, yeah, you need to find the backup center anyway. You need to create some competition at that backup center position. So I'm for giving Cooper Mays, hey buddy, whenever you think you've had enough contact, we're good. Is where I am with Cooper Mays.
Maybe and a lot of it can be too, like, I mean, he can practice, he can do individual, he can do inside run, he can do a whole lot of that stuff. But it's like, okay, well, for this team portion, for this 11-on-11 portion, all right, William Satterwhite, get in there. You know, we've seen enough of Cooper. I mean, it doesn't have to be like straight up quote unquote maintenance day where your helmet's off to the sideline, you're not doing anything.
Right.
Like he can still be getting some work. It might just be taking some of those team reps off.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
who else do they?
Go ahead.
Who else, Hubbard, do they try to work some at center this fall?
Well, I mean,
Satterwhite, but is there another person they can do that with?
I think that's an interesting question because it doesn't feel like it's Vice and Lang to me. Maybe you feel differently, AP, but for me, it doesn't feel like that's just clicked for Vice and Lang. I wonder if he gets a look at more of a look at guard. Is there one of these young guys to go with Satterwhite? You know, I'm fascinated by Jesse Perry and his future in this offense. Because he's the one guy that I thought needed at least a year, maybe a couple years before he could ever get there, right, AP? I mean, he played beer in high school.
Oh, single wing, Hubs.
Or single wing. You're like, okay, he can't kick step, right? He can't pass pro. Like that guy's, I mean, great looking frame. Saw him in camp, you know, as a high school player. Love his athletic ability, but he's like, that guy's not going to be. I mean, he's a ways away. Then you hear everybody talking coming out of spring practice. He was as good as any of those newcomers in spring ball, physically and mentally. Could that guy get a look inside somewhere? I mean, if you can work inside at guard, maybe you could work inside at center. I don't know. I think the tackle situation for Tennessee in 25 and beyond is pretty interesting. And so I think if you're Glenn Ellerbe, because you're set at 4 of the positions on the offensive line for this fall, you spend some time looking at who can play where, right? I mean, does that mean Ginther getting more work at guard? Does that mean Perry looking somewhere else other than tackle? I think you can mix and match a good bit if you're Glenn Ellerbe to build some depth for this fall, but also, Eric, to try to figure out exactly what you think things may look like in 25 for you. Because you've got good bodies that you feel good about, but how does that puzzle piece all fit together, depending on who comes and who doesn't come in the rest of this class, plus what you just brought in?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And also you have, you know, looking ahead to this fall, you have those security blankets of a couple of veteran interior options. So, like, say it's Andre Carrick who starts at left guard, still got Jackson Lampley.
Who could play either guard spot. And Dane Davis, who could play all of them.
Yep, yeah. If a tackle goes down, you got Dane Davis. So, like, you have those safety nets a little bit for this year. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. If you got a guy like Jesse Perry who's not going to play this fall, get some work in.
I play in 4 games. I play all those guys 4 games.
Yeah, not going to be in the 2D big part of the conversation is what I mean. Yeah, give him a look somewhere else if he's a guy that you think could maybe help you out here next football season. 100%. I think it's a time to evaluate and experiment a little bit while still getting the reps for the guys that you know are going to play. The guys who you know you're going to count on up front is getting all that they can. AP,
hold on, I'm trying to find my Hubs and E's dictionary.
What did I say wrong? You're laughing.
No, my kids. I had Max barking, and my kids are down here doing cheerleading. It's great to be a Tennessee ball, and I'm like, what? I'm so ready for my kids to go back to school.
Did I?
They're excited for the weekend, AP. This past weekend.
No, like I've coined the phrase Austinese. So now you're talking about Jesse Perry, and I'm trying to figure out how that is that in the Hubs and E's dictionary. You know.
One other one on the offensive side of the football that I kind of, and again, this is same conversation, and we're not coaches, so we don't have all the answers to this, but you talked about how they'll kind of go about it with Keenan Peely on the defensive side, with Brew McCoy, Cooper Mays. A position to where you absolutely can't afford to have your top guy get dinged up is Dylan Sampson at running back, right?
Absolutely.
But we've looked at years past where Jalen Wright was slow out of the gate because he didn't have a whole lot of contact in spring and in fall. And then last year he did, And I'm not saying everybody's different, but you saw the year that he had. That position, Austin and Rob, you need to get hit a little bit. You need to take contact so you don't fumble and all that. But at the same time, behind Dylan Sampson, at least right now, full go, there's a lot of inexperience. And even when Cam Selden is full go, still a lot of inexperience.
I mean, I err on the side of caution. I mean, it's in the perfect world. I mean, you mentioned the Jalen Wright thing where he had some ball security issues early, a couple of years ago. You just can't afford to have Dylan, not 100% for NC State. So, I mean, again, I totally agree with you, EC. You'd like to get him some contact, but man, you can't. I don't think you can risk it personally.
But yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, 2 years ago, Jalen Wright was all because he had a leg pull, and that's why he didn't go through fall camp. He was the catch me out, Austin, all last summer. He didn't run for 100 yards in combined in Tennessee scrimmages in fall camp. I mean, they managed him. They got him enough and then kind of got out of the way with him. They did not beat him up in fall camp. So I think they'll be smart. I think you can get enough contact and some 9-on-8 stuff and, some individual drill stuff that way and get yourself ready. Again, that's a guy who wants to practice. He was mad in spring. He didn't get a bunch of carries in the scrimmage.
Yep.
That's just the reality. He just has to understand that's where it's at and that's where they are. You're just not going to take those chances there. And listen, he's not getting 20 carries for me against Chattanooga either. I mean, we're just get him lathered up and shut him down, and we'll see in week 2. I just think that's what you have to do with some of those guys.
I think one of the more intriguing conversations here lately is now we look at the defensive side of the football. I mean, we know about the defensive line. We know, you need a healthy Keenan Peely. All these young guys got experience now. You feel better about linebacker. We've discussed the secondary ad nauseum and all that about how it's going to be brand new and everything. You have an idea of that pecking order at kind of entering fall camp at cornerback with Jamal McCoy, Ricky Gibson, McMurray, the transfer behind him. Where's Jordan Matthews? And then I think the conversation gets really interesting at safety. You have Andre Turrentine. You brought in Jacoby Thomas. You have John Slaughter. Will Brooks is very much a part of that conversation. And then at star, Jordan Thomas and Boo Carter. I think, Austin, that is another storyline heading into fall camp. Obviously, the secondary overall is, but what does that pecking order look like? Who do they trust in the back end at safety? And is it going to be any better than what it's been the last couple of years? I think that's going to be intriguing, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, if Boo continues to progress, are they trying to get their best available on the field? And if that's the case, does it push Jordan Thomas back to safety to make their best combination?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great question. Great question.
Jacoby Thomas at? Where's Jacoby Thomas at? Does somebody take a step from spring to fall like a John Slaughter? Where's Will Brooks at? I know Vol fans don't want to hear about the walk-on, but he's somebody that Tim Banks trusts a lot. He's going to play.
Do you think Tim Banks is not taking it seriously if Will Brooks is out there, AP?
What's that?
So do you think Tim Banks is not taking his job seriously if he plays Will Brooks?
Yeah, correct. I mean,
post.
Yeah, that's the stuff that drives me nuts. But again, he's going to play. The question is, does he start? I think I would lean to probably not in the grand scheme of things, but we'll see how if the game started today, I'd say he probably would, but that's why you have the next 30 days to figure it out.
Well, and I think the question on the back end too, Rob, is how much is there a point where Tim Banks steps outside of his comfort zone and rotates guys? We saw Willie Martinez do that more at the cornerback position early in the year, and then obviously they dealt with injury. I mean, Slaughter had the foot, and then Kamal Haddon has the shoulder deal, but they were trying to play a rotation kind of too deep at corner. They were trying to play 4 corners in a game. Where they didn't rotate was at star and at the safety positions. Do they get outside their comfort zone there and rotate and play some guys there, or do they get locked in on 3 guys and be done with 3 guys? I think that's the $1 million question that we won't know the answer to that this team gets into the weeds in the football season.
Yeah, I mean, golly, from what we've seen the past 3 years, I mean, when you almost have to say no, I mean, that's not what he wants to do. I mean, that's just. I think the body of evidence that we're working with. I mean, is there really not been anybody in 3 years that could have stolen 12 snaps a game from Jalen McCullough on the roster? I mean, I'm not saying there is or isn't, but I would have a hard time thinking that there was not somebody who you could put out there for 3 or 4 series without having a huge drop off.
Now the turn time's moved to number 2, Rob. I'm not so sure Jalen McCullough won't be back out there come Chattanooga. How will we know?
I mean, has it been a depth thing, or does he just like to pick 3 and go with it? I mean, I think
it's clearly been a comfort thing for him, a trust thing.
That's what I think.
And so now you get back to where's his. We know he has trust in Will Brooks. I think that's pretty obvious. I think they've gained trust in Turrentine that they did not have with him until he was forced onto the field, which is why he didn't play many snaps before he was forced out there due to injuries. The question is, where's his trust level with Jacoby Thomas? Where's the trust level with Boo Carter at Star? How quickly do they get there? John Slaughter, is there some trust level? I mean, that's, to me, the question coming out of fall camp at safety is not about who starts, but who does Tim Banks come out of there thinking I have more than you? Because I don't think he's come out of a preseason camp the last 3 years thinking I've really got more than 2 safeties.
So that leads me to the question of, well, if you have that trust now more than you did with Andre Turrentine because you were forced to play him, Brent, or AP, then why not usher in a little bit of John Slaughter? Why not have somebody else a part of that rotation early on to see what you have there? I think that kind of I'm not saying Andre Turrentine's an All-American, but if you have more trust than you do in him than you did before because you had to play him, why not throw him out there for a couple series beforehand and see what you have? I'm intrigued to see what that rotation looks like at safety and if maybe it's going to be a bigger rotation this year.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. There was some forced change there in the secondary, a lot of new faces, a lot of new bodies, and just, I think everybody understands where they're at corner, maybe a little bit more at nickel, and we'll see what happens at safety. Either way, you've got a lot of just a lot of new bodies in the secondary that I think fans can get excited about.
Last thing I want to hit on before we say goodbye real quick from those position previews. Rob, you and I spoke on it. AP, let us know what you've heard as well. The kicker position, and we know Jackson Ross is going to be the punter. Salancy's going to be the long snapper. Tuberville's going to kick off. Kicker position's interesting because at first you thought it was going to be Tuberville, and then you've got JT Carver in the mix as well, but maybe it's going to end up being Max Gilbert. What have you heard about Max Gilbert kind of entering camp, and is that going to be a full-blown competition over the next month for place kicker?
It'll be a competition. It'll be Max Gilbert, though. So a lot of praise for Max Gilbert, who's coming off again. Had the knee injury over a year ago, and redshirted last year. But a lot of praise for him, heading into this season. And again, someone who trained with former Vol kicker James Wilhoit, someone who has a ton of confidence, and I think that's a great thing at the kicker spot.